It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a returning guest, Scarlett Holloway. Welcome back, Scarlett.
Hi, it's good to be back.
Oh, I'm glad to have you back. This is for those who maybe missed the first episode that we recorded last year. Let them know a little bit about the stuff you write and the sort of stories you tell.
Oh, well, I tell tall stories. No, I do motorcycle club, romance, suspense, thriller, crime, and I also write paranormal romance, and now let's see, we got family saga. We have I'm actually just now starting to dabble in cozy cupcake mysteries and cozy paranormal mysteries.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's a wide variety of things, yes.
Isn't it though? It's like from one spectrum to the other.
Yeah, I'm especially interested because you mentioned some of the paranormal stuff. So there's a little bit of the fantasy vibe in some of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Very much so. I
Yeah.
kind of cross with my paranormal. I cross into the fantasy paranormal fairy tale world.
Okay, I was wondering what flavor you were talking about there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a darker version of it. So.
All right. So other than this darker fairy tale paranormal romance, what are your other works, your recent works, your works in progress like?
Well, we have Texas Heat, which is my family saga. It's kind of like Dallas meets Dynasty. And
Okay.
yeah, well, for all you soap opera addicts out there, the book is actually written like a soap opera and kind of unique in its own sense. And then I've got a re-release that I'm doing with my paranormal that I was telling you about. And then my cozy cupcake mystery is one that I'm working on right now as well. And it takes place in the same town that my MC series takes place in. And you actually run into some of the characters. I'm trying to do like a crossover kind of type thing, like how Stephen King does with his Castle Rock. Well, I'm kind of doing it with this. And then my cozy paranormal romance mystery takes place on an island called Archer's Island in Oregon. And it's about three sisters who are witches and the different paranormals that they run into and stuff. So it's all kind of fun.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds like a nice location and set of characters just right for that last one. I mean, so are you planning that one to be a series then?
The cozy paranormal is only a trilogy.
Okay.
Because I'm covering one for each sister. You never know. I might expand it if it becomes, really popular.
That makes sense. Yeah.
The cozy cupcake mystery is definitely a series.
Okay. Yeah, and it's always good to have more plates spinning, but especially since it sounds like yours actually they go together pretty well. It's like a chocolate and peanut butter kind of setup for readers.
Yeah, it really is, because you can get so many different things in the mall. So, and I like to dabble in different genres, because if I can't write one, then at least I have another one. I mean, have you ever watched South Park?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you know all about Heroin Hero.
No, I've not watched I've only watched fairly recent South Park. Let me put it that way.
Oh my gosh, you've got to find the one called Heroin Hero. And it's the Guitar Hero one that they did. And they got so stressed out playing Guitar Hero that they moved to this game that's just that relaxing, chasing game and stuff. And they call it Heroin Hero. And
Okay.
yeah, it's amazing. And that's what my cozy are just that relaxing, kind of fun. So
Yeah, yeah, no, that's really interesting. I've noticed lately. I tend to enjoy when I'm editing because I've been editing a lot of these my science fiction series, and I've noticed I really enjoy editing when it's super dramatic and stuff. I really enjoy reading my own work when it's like, yeah, this is really stuff is really changing a lot, and that's probably the opposite of the kind of thing cozies do. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not hugely knowledgeable about cozies at this point.
oh, cozies are your you remember Murder She Wrote?
Uh, no, I don't
Oh,
really. I know what it
I'm
is.
showing
I've
my
never seen any of
age.
it.
Wow,
Maybe.
I
I mean, I
totally
know.
just aged myself.
I've heard people refer to it.
Yeah, well, it's cozy mysteries are those that where Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, those were cozy mysteries. They're not actually detectives, they're not police or anything, but they're sleuths.
Yeah.
And they might own a bed and breakfast, or they might own a bakery, something that is completely total opposite spectrum. And you have the violence in there to the extent of somebody got murdered. You don't go into detail about how their blood splattered across the room, or the sound of the gun, stuff like that, like you would in something else. It's just a nice cozy, maybe PG kind of book.
Okay. Yeah.
Just
No, that's a good
real
description. I
plain.
think. Yeah.
Yeah.
That jives with the stuff I've heard about it. I tend to read. Obviously, I tend to read science fiction and fantasy, and there's not a whole lot of cozy going on in most of those.
No. Not at all.
And that's when I kind of remark on it because it strikes me as a lot of these, especially the series fiction, a lot of those tend to get kind of comfortable with them, right? Like that's part of the fun.
Right.
And I worry sometimes that I don't let my readers get too comfortable, at least not with this series.
Yeah, and see, and I don't let them get comfortable in my MC or
Yeah.
my paranormal, my dark paranormal. So, because nobody is safe, but very, very few characters in those series. So,
Yeah. So what's the difference in writing series that where the stake maybe the stakes are a little lower, or just the reader knows that the story is going to be a little safer kind of thing.
um, like, what do you mean? And the difference between like
What's it like to write as opposed to writing your MC series versus the cozy type stuff?
well, it's so different because like you have to be just intense when you're writing the
Mm-hmm.
MC. And with the cozy, it's just like tra la 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 la, and you want to sing the sound of music.
Okay.
It's more of a relaxing kind of thing because and reading it is the same way. You might have the tense scenes, but it's more of a psychological kind of thing rather than just action, if that makes sense.
No, it
Cozy
makes perfect
mysteries
sense.
kind of
Yeah.
make you think a little bit more, like the who done it.
Yeah, that's what they always. That's what I kind of thought. I was just kind of curious. I'm just kind of curious. When it's like, when you dig into something like, I like Stephen King. Most of his books are pretty intense, but then there's also this weird whimsical side sometimes. Like in one of his Dark Tower books, I forget which one,
Right.
but he wrote the term, or the narrator says this. It's horses of courses, and it's
Uh-huh.
just this little rhyme in the narration. It's like, what the hell? What is going on here? And this
Right.
is an otherwise very dark, serious book, right? For the most part. Um, and
No,
that's the
I
kind, yeah.
agree.
You try to avoid diversions like that, right? And when you're writing the more intense stuff, I'd imagine.
Yeah, because with cozies, there's no swearing. There's no, I mean, it is clean.
Mm-hmm.
And with your darker, intense stuff, it is, you know, I actually had a review with Policy of Truth my debut novel, that there was just too much swearing. And it's like, dude, you're dealing with bikers. They can make a sailor blush. Obviously, this is not your style of reading.
Yeah. No, I know most authors who put any profanity in their work, I think, deal with that at some point. I've heard of tons of stories about it. Yeah. From people from authors like Paul Cooley or Jake Bible, that kind of thing. People are like, I can't believe you put that many curses in the book.
Right, exactly. And that's how it is with policy in my MC series, that you never know what's going to come out of anybody's mouth, like seriously. Book 2 will actually have a graphic content and possible trigger content warning in it, because like nobody is safe in this book. In this book, everything goes boom. So
oh, that sounds exciting. I've got to say, and that's the kind of stuff I guess I would say that's the kind of stuff I like to read, but it's tough for me to nail it down because I don't like stuff to get too visceral anymore. I'm kind of toning that down as I get a little older here. Because I used to be all about, just like, okay, was never really a big horror reader, but I'm like, nothing really bothered me for, a lot of fiction when I was a teenager. And then the older I get, it's like the less it takes to make me go, ew, I don't really want to do this anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think I gravitated toward cozy, was because I'm getting, and I don't want to say I'm getting old, but it's more fun to think about a plot. I mean, all my plots are heavy. Tons of twists, tons of cliffhangers. I even have Easter eggs in my books for people to pick up on. But there's just something about a cozy that's just, it drew me in. So, and it just could be because I am getting older.
Well, and you want different stuff at different points in your life. That's for sure, right? Yeah, and I was thinking, another reason you might be more drawn to the cozies is just as a change of pace, right?
Yeah, I mean that could very well be.
That's just my armchair thing here, huh? Sorry.
Huh?
I was just armchairing that for you.
Well, I mean, I like my Murder, She Wrote. Death in Paradise, the BBC show.
Okay.
Is also considered cozy. Midsummer Murders are cozies. The old Agatha Christie's are cozies. Those are
okay.
They're just fun, and they draw you in.
Yeah, and then there's not to not to put any, like, the twists you get in there are not going to, like, destroy the main character kind of thing. Like, that's one of those, right. or most of the major characters. The investigator is relatively safe, right? Most of the time.
Oh, of course.
I mean, even though there's peril, right? Like, that's the kind of thing that most books are going to have, that kind of, they do risky things. But my impression is in the cozies that there's not usually a payoff of, something horrible happens to them.
Exactly. Yeah. Nothing horrible happens to the main character at all, except maybe like they might get a gun pointed at them and the police have to come in and save them because they figured out who done it. And, that's the exciting part. So very much so, pretty much characters are safe that in there. But like in my motorcycle club group, romance, nobody but like 3 characters in there are safe. And the only reason that those 3 characters are safe is because their plot spans the whole series.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't try. I mean, like, I'm not a huge character slaughterer, but I don't like to put it to note, this character's definitely going to make it to the end of the series on most of them.
Well, like I said, I definitely know that 2 of them, because their book is the last book in the series. So they will make it to the end. Anybody else, no guarantees. None.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So definitely more darkness in those ones, more twisted.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Stuff. Yes. So as far, and I think, I think in the first podcast we recorded, you mentioned a lot about keeping your stories authentic, right?
Yes.
So it's just making me curious with the cozies, is that, because there's this kind of knowledge that the reader has going into this, that the main character is kind of safe. Is there anything you have to do differently to make it feel authentic, like feel like there's real stuff, feel like it's not just a book,
Yeah. And that's going to be the probably the most difficult part for me, is trying to keep as authentic as I can to real life. But I believe with cozies, that's where you're kind of hitting maybe almost in a fantasy kind of element on the fact that that character is safe. Maybe in one book, like how they'll do a to be continued in a TV show, so you don't know if your main character is okay or not, but always in book 2, they always come out okay. Well, you could probably do something like that in a cozy.
Okay. That makes sense. And
Yeah.
so there's some range of stuff you can do, obviously.
There definitely is. It's just knowing how to play it and to play it well.
Yeah, that's because that does strike me as being a pretty specific genre too. I mean, it's not that the other genres you mentioned, writing in are a whole lot less so, right? But there's a certain, how every genre needs its particular things, right? Or it doesn't really belong. Every book in that genre, yeah. And like a family saga, you have to. Actually, I'm not sure what a family saga requires. That was a bad example. But it usually follows. It's more of a series thing, right? Where you follow the characters from the same family, like they're different books, right?
Yeah, right. And that's how it was like with Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys. I mean, my gosh, how many books do they have out? 110. And still doing. Yeah.
Wow.
So, it's one of those things of that Nancy Drew is always going to come out on top, but it might be the struggle for her to get how she got there. What she had to overcome to get to that position is, I think, more of that aspect.
Yeah, and that can be very interesting in its own right. Obviously, it kind of has to be, because that's basically what the book's about. Yeah. So, as far as what you've been reading lately, that was just a hard pull the handbrake kind of transition. Sorry.
I actually got George R.R. Martin's Fire and Blood, and ooh, I've been kind of working on that one. It took me 2 hours to read the first 6 pages. Because you know how he is. You get introduced to 50 characters at one time, and one of those characters has like 5 different nicknames, so you don't know who he's talking about.
Oh, it sounds confusing. Yeah, I didn't. Geez, Martin he's not an easy read, that's for sure.
No, he is not. So I've been tackling that one, and then I actually picked up Charlene Harrison's Midnight series. So I've been kind of toying with that one a little bit. And then I was looking at I think Stephen King just brought out another new one. So I was kind of eyeballing that one.
Cool. So I actually dusted off a nonfiction book that it's actually a book of interviews that I probably mentioned on this show before in some capacity or other, but it's called Death Is No Obstacle, and it's a series of interviews with between 2 fantasy writers. And it's written as it's almost like a play, but it's what they it's Michael Moorcock is the guy being interviewed, and there's like 6 or 7 interviews in the book. They're pretty long, and he talks about a lot about writing process and lots of other cool stuff going on in there. But it is kind of interesting because he took such a dim view of fantasy writing, even though he's like a trailblazer. He's like, there's the second Sword and Sorcery phase was kind of his time to shine, as far as that goes. He's fairly well, I mean, I think he's still around, but he, as of this recording, but he's getting up there in years at this point. But because Conan the Barbarian's kind of first wave Sword and Sorcery, and then there's what Moorcock wrote.
Yes, I love my Conan the Barbarian.
Oh yeah, Queen of the Black Coast. I love that story, especially.
Yeah, now that they're got Arnold to play Conan again, it's going to be really interesting.
Ooh, I had not heard about that. That's interesting. Yes. It's gonna be King Conan probably at this point.
Yeah, actually, I believe that's what he is playing King Conan, and I think it goes into his son or something like that, if I remember reading the story correctly.
Okay.
So
that is interesting. So, and that's real time movie news reactions from me. So as far as reading goes, that's where I'm at, though. I'm still reading basically the same suite of books. I've got a lot of books on my plate, as always. Right. Most writers, I think, are like that now. I refuse to read in the genre that I'm writing in. So if I'm doing my MC, I'm going to read fantasy. If I'm writing fantasy, I'm going to read something like King or Kuntz or, something along that lines. I refuse to read what I'm writing. So. It's a pretty reasonable thing to do too, because you don't want the influence to be too direct, right?
Exactly.
So it's been good having you on the show. Let everybody know the name of your books and where they can find everything you do online.
Well, we got Policy of Truth that's going to be re-released, I should say, February 22nd, because it did get pulled off the shelf after 24 hours. And then we're going to have A Raven's Fairy Tale in, I believe, March. And then May, we have Texas Heat. In June, we got A Sweet Death. July, we're going to have A Beautiful Life. And then in October will be book 2 in my MC series that follows Policy of Truth, called Hush. And that's the plan so far, but you know how we indie writers are. That always changes.
I'm always glad to hear an aggressive publishing schedule, I gotta say.
Yeah, we can always hope. And then I can be found online, of course. Facebook would be facebook.com/the Scarlett Holloway. And I can be found on Twitter at A Scarlett's Song. And that's scarlettholloway.com.
Thanks. And that's there's a lot of good places to check out there, folks. So and a lot of good books coming up, from what I can tell.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. So as for me and this show, you can find more episodes at mentalsellerpublications.com, hosted by Libsyn. And you can find us on YouTube actually as well. All these episodes go to YouTube now. So go to I forget what channel. It must be Tim Niederreiter is the name of my channel. So you search that on YouTube, you'll find it. Again, and of course, you can find all my books on Amazon.com under the name Tim Niederreiter. And thanks for listening, everybody. Good night.
That tears it.